right. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to SaaS Mondays live on Fridays. I'm really excited for this one. This is our 10th episode, by the way. So if you've been following along with the show, we've reached 10. This is kind of a milestone for the show. And to celebrate, we actually have a really good show today. I'm super excited to be joined by one of my teammates, Koyal. And
Hi.
also, hi, Coyle. We brought in a special guest from Capgemini as well. So I'm going to give you guys a second to introduce yourself, and then we'll sort of talk about what we're going to talk about today, and then we're actually going to talk about it. So, Coyle, why don't you go first? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Hi everyone, my name is Koel De. As Bill said, I'm actually part of his team. I'm a SaaS and AI product strategist at AWS SaaS Factory team. I help SaaS companies during their transformation to SaaS. I'm very excited to be here and I'm looking forward for our discussion.
Nice, nice. And we're also joined by Prakash from Capgemini. Prakash, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're sitting, what you do in your background at Capgemini.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me here today, Bill. I am a senior director with Capgemini, and I focus on all things SaaS, PaaS, HaaS, whatever, right? Anything as a service. I'm part of the advisory practice, and I help clients make that transition, scale the transition, or optimize that transition into a subscription model. Looking at their operating model and so on. I'm based in India. I do work a lot with clients in North America and, of course, Capgemini, so therefore Europe as well. So looking forward to this conversation today.
Awesome. Awesome. And I always forget to introduce myself. So if anyone doesn't know who I am, my name is Bill Tarr. I'm also with the AWS SaaS Factory. I'm again a strategist like Koyal. We spend a lot of time thinking about what it means to build applications, to deploy applications, to monetize applications. And in fact, Koyal and I spent a lot of time just this week talking to a bunch of partners about product-led growth. So I'm excited to be joined by both Prakash and Koyal because as we've been talking about this, it's been a very interesting conversation for me personally to think about what it means to do different types of growth and how to go also from a free trial into converting into paid users. And if you've been with us for the last few weeks, I also hosted last time, and we talked just about pricing, all the implications about pricing. But these pricing strategies at some point have to lead to somebody paying money, right? So Prakash, I want to kick this off to you and say, in your experience working with a bunch of different SaaS leaders, and you've talked to a lot of different leaders working with a company like Capgemini, right? It's like, what are the most overlooked strategies for getting that free trial to conversion? Because I'm pretty sure anybody who's listening who's building any kind of SaaS platform is very interested in how they can get more paying customers. So why don't you launch us off with a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I talk to customers, that conversion from trial to an actual paying customer is a huge part of it. And a lot of customers even start one step before that, right? Should I even offer a trial? Right? Does it really make sense? We have a Capgemini subscription index which we've developed, which kind of tells us that there is no statistically significant difference between customers who are offering a trial and customers who don't offer a trial, right? When we look at the top 300 companies who are offering subscription at all, right? So it just depends on the nature of product that you are really offering, and if you do decide to offer a trial because you want your customers to experience it and so on. One of the most overlooked strategies as far as the conversion from trial goes is really breaking that journey down into mm, a lot more steps. It's usually two or three steps that companies break them down into. We break them down into about 16 steps from a trial to conversion perspective. And when you look at that in a bit more of a micro segment, and you see where that customer is stopping the usage and where that customer is not seeing that particular value, when you look at that in a little more granularity with a standardized lens of maybe 16 steps are not right for you, but picking that up in that specific detail helps identify the customers whom you're losing out, who are not converting, who are stopping usage, any more of that. I think that really helps many of my customers whom I worked with before.
Nice. Nice. Coyle, jump in on this. I don't want you to fall out of this conversation because I think you have a lot of perspective on this as well. I mean, I know you do because I listened to you talk about it earlier in the week, but jump right into this and tell us how you think about this.
Yeah, so I actually kind of agree with what Prakash said. When you think about product-led growth, it is about creating a combination of features as well as pricing model that allows your customers to understand not just the value, but makes you do not force your customer or you do not trick your customer to become a paid customer. Rather, you create a conversion path so that it becomes their natural pathway. And what Prakash said, I would actually go into the details. If you look at the successful product led growth companies that are out there in the world, one thing is very common among them. First and foremost, they are deeply integrated in the user workflows. If you think about the customer journey map, the one that we talk about, they are deeply thinking about what my customer wants. They are putting themselves in customer shoes and thinking about how I can provide them enough value in the free tier, but rather also give them enough opportunity so that they can become an upgraded customer or a paid customer. Customer journey mapping is one area which Prakash said maybe 16 step is not the right for you, but thinking about very, very, holistically, what's the process, what's the steps through which customer will be interacting with my product. And the next step that I think many of them misses are aligning the pricing. Your pricing has to be so easy and explainable and low risk so that your customer can start. So if in the free trial maybe you're paying $0, right? Like you're not paying any money, but in the paid trial, like if you have to pay like $2,000. I'm just making up money, but you get my point. Like if you're making it like $2,000 just to become a paid customer, immediately if I'm a price sensitive customer, for me it will be like immediately a stop, like rather I go and travel somewhere with that $2,000. But if it is like something within my budget, like let's try with maybe $50, like I have a usage based pricing through which I'm just using the much and I can understand like whether the money that I am paying has giving me some value out of it. It will be much more easier for the user to become a paid customer. So I would think from that lens. Let's just not the customer journey map. Also think about what pricing opportunities that you are providing to your customer. It will be a combo of customer journey mapping as well as the pricing model that you are extending to your customers.
Nice. Prakash,
Yeah,
let me ask
one
you.
thought that
Yeah, go ahead.
one thought that when Koel's talking about that journey map, one of the things that many of my customers whom I talk to find useful is finding that friction spot in that journey map, right? And there's two
Correct.
types: one which actually removes friction and one adds friction, right? Like we call it that anti patterns, and looking at what the moments that matter, or call it whatever makes sense, right? you know when you are looking at that experience that the customer has in that journey map, if you can pinpoint the areas which making customers journey smoother, for example onboarding, right? Like, of course we all know smooth onboarding is really important. Are you taking too much information or too less information? It's a fine balance, right? So looking at each of those steps and looking at those anti patterns is it helps a lot with conversion of the lot of the trials.
Nice.
I'll just add one more thing here. So, this is thank you for that, Prakash. And we all know that looking at this anti pattern is very specific to the product that you are serving, the kind of customer that you are serving, the kind of market that you are serving. But Bill, you know that we work with customers from enterprise to startup. And one thing has emerged, and which can be little, contradictory to the what could be the popular belief. If you remove all the friction from the onboarding, then sometimes it becomes a deterrent for certain type of customer. Because yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because at some point of time, your customer needs to feel the dopamine hit that I have solved something that was difficult for me. So you have to do a fine balance, like not removing all the friction and keeping certain level of friction that will give your customers the feel good feelings that it's just not does not solve my problem, but rather I am becoming way smarter while I'm using this product. That's also important. I can give you an example. I was working with a developer focused product and they removed all the friction, and that was not the best possible solution for the particular customer that they were serving. Rather, they made it little harder for them to understand how to get to the documentation, how to get to make sure that each APIs are connected to the target API sources, and that made their conversion much more. Their conversion numbers actually went up, and their customer actually commented on the communities that they actually really like this. More like, it is solving their problem, it is making them smarter while using them. In addition, it is more like a little gamified, obviously not a huge gamified experience, but that experience is helping them to get through the point A to point B the way they want. So all in all, I would like to say, yes, removing the friction is really, really important, but sometimes maybe keeping certain level of friction is also important. But what is more important than that? What we call at AWS or Amazon, think backward from your customer, what they want, what they are looking for.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. I mean, when you talk about the developer tools, it resonates with me because my most recent experiences with product-led growth are tools like Klein. And it's so easy to get started, right? You start coding and you can see real value happening, and you don't have to learn anything. As a developer, they plug into your existing tools. I didn't have to figure anything out. It just did it. I typed in some commands, turned my application into something else overnight. But I think, while those are really compelling, those stories are really clear about what the value is. And I converted from a free tier into a paying customer almost automatically because I was in the middle of a project and I had to keep going. I was like, no, I can't stop now. So I paid 20 more bucks and then I would finish my project, right? But I think in some customer journeys you're talking about, the value is much more complex, right? Like it's not so easy and clear for you to get from oh, I was coding and now I have to pay to code, but I want to because I've already seen the value. In those cases, is the journey a little bit different? And how do you, if you have a product where the value takes more than 15 minutes to be realized, and maybe it takes weeks, what do you do in those cases to encourage conversion? Prakash, I'll kick it to you first if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely. I think the first thing which we really look for is what is that metric? What is that value metric that that your product is offering to your end client, right? Is it what outcome are you driving for the client? It's not about the efficiency of the product. It's not about the speed of deployment. It's about how are you really able to make an impact for the end customer. Why did they buy this, right? Very famously, this Hitley company in US, right? They sell these small hand tools, right? They had this saying which really always sticks in my mind, right? Which is, companies, customers are not buying drills; they're buying holes in the wall, right? So, right.
Right.
So when you're looking at that outcome, that value metric, if you can define that really well, maybe take a disproportionate amount of time, define that first, right? And then you look at how much of that value metric are you delivering. Let's say if you have a tiered pricing, for example, how much of that value metric are you delivering at different tiers, right? You don't have to give all the features in a basic tier. You might choose to give a few features, but you have to deliver some part of the value, of that value metric that the customer actually bought it for. If you give them the entire value, they're going to be in the basic tier, right? So I think that's where and that's really the main differentiating factor. That's where we would start that particular journey with the customer.
Nice. Quail, are there any sort of individual things or activities you can do in these more complicated projects? I'm trying to think about, if I was using a product and I couldn't necessarily understand the value, where would you drive a customer so that they could come to understand that value and discover it themselves or self-service in some way themselves?
No. So I come from pricing background, and when I started my journey, one of my mentor told me one thing, and it's actually a saying by a sales guru that feature tell, but value sell. So even when you have so many features in your product capabilities, you really need to, the point that Prakash made, like you really need to think about what are the values that your product is providing. And from that perspective, when you are thinking about value just does not stay in the air, right? It needs to be connected to a particular customer. And
Right.
majority of the time, if it is a complex product, based on my experience, what I have seen that it does not cater to only one kind of customer. I come from AWS background. I will take example of AWS customers. It's just not a developer that we cater to, right? We have cloud architect, we have DevOps engineer, we have SREs, and you get it. Like I am not going into the details, but you get it. Like where exactly, how diverse is our customer base? So when you think about these complex products, when you are thinking about the value, also think from the customer lens, like who are your different customer segments that you are targeting, and how Prakash said, like when you are thinking about how you can give like the basic value from your product, also think about like, what are the subset of the customer segment that will get more benefit out of it. So when you are thinking about creating a PLG tier or a free tier or a freemium or a free trial, decompose not only your product and think about the unit value that can be provided, but also decompose your entire customer segment and think about the smaller customer segment to whom you or to which subset you can provide this value. So it is more like you are thinking about how you can start small and then expand. It's more like the land and expand strategy that does generally SaaS companies follow. It will be a great path to go from there.
Nice. We actually got a question from the audience here from an old friend of mine, Pranjit. How do you balance customer acquisition with retention in a subscription model?
Yeah, maybe I'll take a shot at that one, right? So you really, I think companies need to look at metrics when they talk about it, right? A lot of times platforms, they're just focused especially on acquisition a lot. So the cost, the CAC, the CAC to LTV ratio, cost of acquisition to lifetime value ratio, can go sky high, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a small customer like you mentioned, it's a new product like you mentioned, Pranjit, then you're probably not too worried about those CAC to LTV ratios in the beginning at least. But at some point, right, when you have put in a certain amount of investment, you need to draw a line in the sand to say, in 3 months and 6 months, I'm looking at getting these many customers in, and this is my budgets to be able to get them in, right? And you're looking to maximize that particular budget, but in the long run, right, you are looking to stay in a stable sort of a CAC to LTV ratio, and that really helps. So that covers both sides, right? If your lifetime value will only stay up if your retention numbers are high, right? Typically, the break even periods, even if for a B2B customer, even 20 months, 25 months is not a bad number to be in, actually, if you look at metrics across the board. But you won't get there in the beginning. It will take some time to actually get there. So for your specific question, you're looking at a marketing spend and an investment that you want to make in order to acquire customers initially, and then go from there.
Nice.
If I have to add, I will just add what actually Prakash said. I 100% agree with that, specifically for a new product. But overall, I would say, like, what's your North Star metric is? What exactly you are looking for? For a new product, my expectation would be acquiring more customers, getting their feedback, understanding whether there is a product market fit or not. That's the path you're going towards, right? That's generally has been the norms in the industry when it is a new product. Like, let's get the product market fit. And customer acquisition would be important at particular time. But we all know that none of us has unlimited budget on marketing and sales, and we have to make a measurement on that. So the reality will also depends upon what's your North Star metric, what's the budget that you have, and what go-to-market strategies that you are following. If you are following like putting a billboard in a freeway, obviously that is going to cost you a lot. But then there are other methods that you might be following and thinking about how you can be cost effective about that. And from that particular point, your balance between retention and customer acquisition, the reality can happen. There is one thing that ideally I would like to do, and then there is a reality that we need to follow through, right? And for a new product specifically, they are really need to put prove that they have a product market fit, or they have to find a product market fit. So from that perspective, which go-to-market model you're following, what is your North Star metric, and how efficiently you are acquiring customer. Based on that, your customer acquisition and retention will depend.
Nice. Let me steer this in a slightly different direction, but like going along the same, like a lot of what I'm hearing are around metrics and around self-service and the ability for customers to figure out what to do on their own, and sort of us predetermining their paths, what their customer journey is going to be, and then hopefully they follow those paths. But is there a time in this journey where like a human being actually has to jump in and get involved? Is there a place where we would say like, okay, we need to touch base with this person. The human touch is needed. How do you handle that? And when do you think that is really kind of appropriate in this customer journey?
I think we need to balance both of those, right? You need to predetermine, if when a customer is onboarding, right, you have to send them a welcome message, right? And you have to make sure they're logged in, and you can choose whether that welcome message comes from a generic inbox or from a specific person whom they will reply to, right? As well, right? They could be your customer success manager who is there for that journey, but maybe they're not necessarily clicking the send button and typing that email because it's a fairly generic email.
Yeah.
But if the customer responds to that, that gets a human, right? Then you will need to look at the usage pattern of that customer. What do they do in the first day? What do they do in the first 3 days? What do they do in the first 7 days? And basis those usage patterns, there could be some prompts that you pre-build, which may require a human touch sometimes, especially if you feel that you're going to lose that customer whom you acquired with so much difficulty. When you put in a prompt to say, this is the report that you accessed, right? Is there some help I can give you? Here's a training video. You want to go through this? That helps with triggering the customer. And I think eventually it depends on the package size of your particular product, of how much human intervention that you really want to bring in for every single customer. If the package size is high enough, then I think the human intervention increases a lot more. But if your recurring revenue per month from each customer is not supporting it, then you probably are looking at more of an automated or even maybe Gen AI or an AI sort of a intervention today.
So even like the human touch stuff might not be the human touch. It might be the AI human touch. I think maybe we're all going.
No other way today.
That's how you become efficient. But in all seriousness, what Prakash said, if I would build upon that, at some point of time, you would require a human in the loop, specifically if it is really, critical, or really it is targeting a higher value. So that's the time actually the definition of PQL, product qualified lead, comes in, wherein like based on what Prakash said, like if you have the visibility in how your customers are using, if you continuously see that your customers are using your product more extensively, and obviously there could be a champion within your team who would be advocating your product, but they would also need your support, right, as a product team. So that is the time, if your product is becoming more from an individual and even one team to an enterprise type opportunity, that's the signal you are getting from the usage of your customer. I would recommend that that is the time you actually involve a sales rep or a human in the process, so that it is easier for even for your advocate to champion your product within the organization. It's just not the advocate who is a lone person who is actually advocating your product. You are actually sending a sales rep within the organization to talk to you about your product.
Nice.
I see there is a question that
There's
came.
a question specifically for Koel. So
He is actually my classmate. We
He
studied.
is.
Yeah, I just say nice to see that you're attending this. What's the question?
All right, so I'll read it out loud for everybody, just in case anyone can't see the comments. What are ways to think about ROI and methods to directly tie the SaaS benefits to potential client returns? And then this is especially important when leaders are under pressure to deliver against short-term and long-term strategic goals. What do you think, Koel?
Okay, so is it thinking about like what would be the return of investment of having the product by using the customers? I would go back to what actually Prakash said, is thinking about the value proposition of your product. I was more and more like after like now that AI has been adopted by majority, like a lot many companies than it was back in 2023. I see that the role of product managers are also changing. Initially, product managers were, based on my conversation, obviously, initially product managers were talking more about like what's the impact of the product or the feature that they are going to release to the customers. Now, more and more, they have to talk about what are the impacts that is going to happen through pricing or from return of investment perspective or for their customers. And one of the metric is responsible for that. I will talk about it, which is we do not talk much, but this is becoming very popular, is revenue per employee. Organizations are more and more looking for how they can become more efficient, and that's why each features are becoming more and more important. Like just not the customers are satisfied, but what will be the revenue impact on this feature. So if we really have to put into like what would be the ROI impact of any product or a feature for our customer, we should start with what Prakash said, this proportionate time of thinking about what the value this product is bringing to your customers. Speak to your customer when you are developing the product. Do not limit it within the product team, but also involve your sales or customer success team, because they will have much more qualitative feedback on how those kind of features will help them. Look at your customer support tickets and other ways, like think about the new features or the new functionality or the new products that you are bringing. How will that impact your customers? How positively? Just not like satisfaction wise, but also revenue wise or bottom line wise, how that will make the impact. I will start from there, like really being concise about what's the value that it will be providing to my customer, and from there thinking about how you can, like based on the investment and the value that it will bring, then I will be developing the ROI calculation. That's how I would be approaching. If Prakash, you had to do it, how would you approach it?
Oh, I love that, Koel. I mean, I agree with all of that, right? And also, make it easy for your customer to figure out the benefit. Make it really easy. Once you've decided to, this is the value, this is the kind of ROI that you can get from using your particular product. You should ideally make it, in your face sort of a thing for the customer to say, this is what you've gained already. And normally customers are not always purchasing the product for that exact same value metric, right? They use different sort of lenses on the same value metric as well, right? It may be slightly differentiated depending on the nature of your product. For example, if you're maybe selling a software to improve efficiency in marketing, right? It could be improving the quality of the leads, it could be improving the number of leads, it could be improving
Correct.
your conversion of leads, but your value is there. So if you give them a way to calculate and show them that this was here and this improved right up front, it's much easier to handle the problem of short term versus long term strategic goals. Leaders will always give you more space if they see progress, right? if they,
Right.
if they see that something is moving in the right direction, they will give you more time. So then that time pressure that you've mentioned there, Justin, that could be a way to come out of it for the end customers. And when you get time, you always see value, and you always get retention as well.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Justin. I think it took us in a cool direction. Other than the fact that you guys agree way too much, I want to find something to make you guys
Right.
fight over.
Next one, we're going to
It's
disagree.
it's great. I mean, honestly, I think that it shows how much time. I mean, and I've been in the room with both of you talking to customers before. I think AWS and Capgemini in particular have a lot of alignment in how we think about pricing and the strategies and how we talk to customers and how we've seen success with our customers, right? What we've seen be successful. But I'm kind of going down that road in terms of like what we bring to customers to make them successful. Prakash, I'm going to aim this at you. As you think about pricing and packaging, what type of frameworks are you bringing to SaaS customers? And I know you mentioned right in the beginning that you guys do have some frameworks at Capgemini. What kind of frameworks are you bringing to SaaS customers to help them to evolve their monetization strategies?
Yeah. So when we talk to SaaS customers, right, we encounter customers in different stages of their journey, right? It starts with customers who might be just creating an MVP, and they want to a minimum viable product, and launching it like a pilot in the market. Or I look at customers who have who've launched the product, and they're looking to scale it, or who have a decent amount of revenue from a particular product, and they're looking to optimize it, right? So when I look at an MVP sort of a customer, for them, pricing is going to be very ambiguous. We of course look at the usual suspects of what's the competitor, what is that, is there an equivalent product in the particular market?
Mhm.
Is there some value metric of what you're comparing it to the end client? That value metric, can you get like say 10% of the value that you are delivering to an end client, right? You're looking at many of those metrics to identify a particular pricing for a client, but it's not really a mathematical formula. And especially in a B2B scenario, it's much harder to arrive at what that price is for a customer, right? In a B2C, at least you can do a lot of surveys, you can apply some textbook techniques like that Van Western Corp and so on. But in a B2B scenario, you are using the features that everybody uses, like making the middle tier more attractive, like some leading manufacturers do, using some decoy effects, to not to get them to a specific tier of pricing.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah, you do all of that, but eventually what is that price at that particular tire is a bit of an art and a science, and it takes a little bit of time to get to that stage. My suggestion is you launch it at a particular price, Just don't sign a contract with the customer that you'll never change the price for as long as you're alive. Keep the price flexible, and then discover the price as the product scales.
Yeah, I've been surprised how many times I've talked to customers and they're mentioning these customers that they signed early on who they signed lifetime contracts with. And now they're maybe it was an on-prem product and now they're switching to SaaS and they're like, how do we maintain this relationship? Like, I think some of the mistakes we make early on with pricing probably have an inordinate impact on our overall story arc. How do you, like, in that initial phase, because like at Coil, we've been in calls. For one of the first things we tend to hear from customers is, I have no idea how to price this thing. I know people want it. I know it's a good product. I know they get value out of it, but that doesn't tell me how to price it. Like, where do you, like, I heard Prakash say a little bit about, having those early interviews, about talking to people, about gathering information. Where did you start in this process?
So we both have been in the same conversation, but majority of the time we are being pulled into the conversation because the customer, like AWS customer who is developing the product on AWS, is actually looking for the cost. They are looking for the cost, and they would like to add a benchmark, add a tier of like 70% or 80% margin, and that's the pricing that they would like to go through majority of the time. Like when they are starting their journey, they brought Bill or Coil into the conversation because they would like to know cost per user, and for each user they would like to just add like a percentage, and that would be their pricing. So first and foremost, we tell them what actually, again, I'm not able to contradict with Prakash, but that's where we tell them like, maybe that's not the way we should be thinking about, but rather think from the value that you bring for your customers.
Yeah.
Yes, that a part that you can go from, obviously, like thinking about from cost plus something. But what happens if, like, for some reason, and it is a SaaS product is not only developed on AWS services, right? There would be other third-party services that will be included for maybe serving one customer. What happens if they increase their price? You go back and tell your customer that you have to increase price. How many times you can have this conversation? And think about how you will be dependent upon other third parties as well. I understand that that's the cost is part of the value chain and you need to consider, but if you are focused majorly on the cost plus mentality, then you will be in much more difficult conversation with customer, if not otherwise. So first and foremost, I strongly recommend that that's not the way to go forward. Second one that we start with is that thinking about the value. And for B2B products, I agree with Prakash. Like, it is harder for B2B to think about the pricing and way easier for B2C. But we start with, generally for B2B, what I have seen, like, it is either time saved or cost saved or revenue generated. I'll give you an example. If you have a CRM product, and you, through your CRM product, your sales reps are able to create opportunities, log every details, and thinking about everything. Ideally, the ideal phase will be that you are getting a percentage of the revenue of the each opportunity that was getting created on your CRM product. But if you go into the reality, that's just not possible. And how do you weigh, like, how do you understand whether what was the opportunity amount? Maybe the opportunity amount was 10,000, and because of data issues it became like $1,000 or became like $100,000. What do you do in those cases? So that's just not possible. In those cases, really, you need to think about like what your customers are used to, like the one that Prakash said. Like, is it per seat pricing or some outcome that they are looking for? We are in the age of AI, so people are really thinking about like what would be the outcome and whether you can correctly attribute to that outcome. Once you have that idea about who your customer and how they are getting the value, then it becomes like I'm not able to contradict Prakash at all. Sorry, Prakash.
I'll find
I
something. I'll
tried
find something for you
so
guys to fight
much.
over.
But it's actually like when I was thinking when he said it's actually combo of arts and science. So when I first took a pricing class with Justin, maybe Justin, you can shout out here as well. Like you can also say the first thing that actually blew my mind in my class was it's actually a combo of arts and science. Pricing is not only about the number that you put in, but also how your customers, more than the number, it is how you help your customer to pay to you. So once you have identified who your customer, how they are getting value, what would be the pricing metric that will help them to convey the value to you. Now it comes to the part of thinking about your packaging structure, and that comes from the customer segmentation, like what packaging structure would make sense for your customers. And in my experience, I have seen it is easier to tell if pricing is not working than pricing is working actually. And if your pricing is working, if you feel like your pricing is perfect, then you should be able to raise your prices and not lose a lot of volume out of it. We all know that if we increase prices, there would be some volume loss. But if you're increasing your prices, you think your pricing is working, there is no backlash, then maybe your pricing was not working. But it goes in my mind based on the customers that I have or my experience. It is easier to say your pricing is not working based on some signals than whether your pricing is working, to be honest.
Yeah, I that all makes sense. But one of the things I think I heard you say along the way here, Prakash, you were talking a little bit about like the research side of this. So I think there's like again this art versus science that Coyle is talking about. There's the art of like trying to feel your way through this. There's also just the existing information that exists out there. You know, if you're selling a car, you're not going to not pay attention to your competitors' prices, right? Like you're going to do some research, you're going to figure that out. You're going to try to understand what your customers are willing to pay, like those different pieces of this. How do you sort of get your customer in the mindset of understanding the external environments that they don't control and how to contextualize their own product within those?
Oh, that's an interesting question, right?
Got one. Yes.
Yeah. Usually, what happens with customers, right, is they kind of know that this pricing is a very thorny issue to start with, right? Uh, is because the products that I end up working with customers in more often than not don't exist in the market,
Mm.
or even if they do, they don't have too much of a market share. They've just launched it and they're just trying to figure it out. So in terms of a mindset, they kind of know that this is going to be a little bit difficult. They've tried their hands at trying to fix this one as well. So it's so they're open to different suggestions, right? We do offer to talk to their end customers, right? And kind of look at which are the features which have to go into a specific tier that they look at. Where is that value being delivered? We also look at usage data if it exists for a particular product, and help them define each of the product lenses from the different tiers. Focus group interviews, we can use some amount of direct interviews as well with their potential end customers. And then also look at some sort of willingness to pay for the service that's being offered, right? You do look at all of that, and that's how you kind of arrive at a price, right? If the difference is, let's say, within 20%, I think it's probably a good price, right? I mean, it sounds like a big number, but if you're starting off, right, and you feel you've kind of got it to within 20%, I think you're okay to go ahead and launch. And as you move forward and as you scale, you might discover a more specific price to you, and eventually you might realize that 20% of the price you probably underpriced or overpriced it by 50%. But that means your product has more value or less value than what you initially thought. That you just go with that.
So Coyle, let me ask you a follow-up question to this. And I know we often work with customers early in their journey and when they're setting their pricing, but if you do it wrong and you reach a point in your journey, and there's been a very public case very recently, I won't bring it up because it's a kind of a negative story, but one of the dev tools had set their pricing early and then they switched it and made a lot of people really upset with them. Just the switch in pricing overnight, and they went back and tried to fix it, but it kind of seemed like the damage was done just by announcing different pricing that negatively impacted a significant portion of their user base. They took a lot of champions and turned them into very angry people. So what do you do? How do you message this? How do you change your pricing on the fly in a way that doesn't make your customers upset with you, and keeps them sort of on your team? What strategies can you do to keep them aligned with your product, even though you're going to maybe even have to raise prices on them?
Yeah, that's a great question actually, and it's a difficult one to be honest. But where it comes from actually, first and foremost, although these companies may be at the earlier part of their journey, you need to prepare your customers. And when I do prepare your customers, meaning you need to make some pricing changes. And pricing is not only about the number that comes in. Pricing and packaging changes, like maybe you are making some changes with the tier, making some features available for certain areas, maybe those kind of small little changes that will help your customer to understand that for them to how they are getting value out of the product is also fluid, like this company is already making some changes. And the second one, when it comes to like if there is a change that is happening, the communication needs to come from the top of the organization. It should not be that one day I just got a generic email that, okay, you were paying $10 until yesterday, today onwards you have to pay $100. Rather, from the top up from the company or the organization, the messaging has to come. Like you have to prepare your customers early enough that there would be a change down the line in the pricing as well as the packaging, because the value has increased, because X, Y, and Z, and prepare your customer with those changes. More often than not, one of the areas that I see that pricing struggles, because with customers specifically, because the pricing communication is not clear, not only with the change management, even when you are actually extending a particular pricing, you are not clearly telling your customers how they are getting benefit out of it. And if as a customer, think about yourself, put ourselves in customer shoes. The customers are not some different person from some alien, like they are like people like us, you or Prakash. We are using it. If it is coming from the top down and it shows the reasoning behind why this pricing change is happening, are you not more likely to understand why the pricing change is happening?
Yeah.
And also, if you're not making a big jump like $10 to $100, but rather you're making it gradually easier for your customer to accept, like $10 to $15 to understand how those is going to be impacted, then it is much more easier. One last thing that I would say, pricing is about, exchanging the risk between us, like the SaaS provider, as well as the customer.
Yeah.
Your pricing communication will tell how you are actually exchanging the risk. Who is bearing the more risk, either you or the customer? And you have to be really, really mindful of it. It cannot happen like one midnight you felt that this is a great thing that we need to do and you will go with it.
Right.
I'll stop here. I see there is a question
There's a
from
question.
Ranjit.
Yeah, so I'll read it out loud if anyone can't see, because it kind of got cut off on the screen here. With the rapid rise of AI, usage-based pricing and hyper-personalized experiences shaping SaaS in 2025, how should customers evolving their subscription strategies to balance flexibility, customer success, and sustainable growth? What new challenges or opportunities are they encountering as they adapt to these new trends? So I don't know, Prakash, you want to take a stab at that? We're kind of going toward AI and hyper-personalization and evolving our subscription strategies here. How do you think about where this is leading us?
So when we look at how SaaS companies are impacted by AI, right? I feel it's becoming easier for customers to adopt any sort of an SaaS solution, right? Having a bouquet of solutions fit for purpose is becoming easier, more commonplace for any customer, and therefore, earlier there was a bit of a barrier with respect to, you need to put in an API, you need to integrate, and you need to adopt a particular solution with agentic AI coming in as well, right? Some of those API led barriers or integration led barriers are slowly fading away. It's easier for customers to adopt, and therefore, they might choose to have 25 SaaS solutions in their bucket, which is one big thing that I actually see that's really changing. And in terms of how they need how they need to adopt to the some of these trends is, you have to make that customer success a lot stronger, right?
Right.
You really have to show the value that your product is providing to the end customer to improve stickiness. Otherwise, it's so easy to bring in a new product. It's equally easy to remove that product as well and then bring in another one, right? And adoption rates as customers, there's so many startups which are bringing in new features, new solutions. I mean, even on LinkedIn we all see, and everybody gives like a list of 25 things that can improve your PowerPoint, your Excel, your life, whatever, right? So people adopt it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Adoption rates are increasing. So if you want to keep your customers for a longer time, it's really the customer success that you really need to strengthen to make sure the customer sees the value in what you're offering, and also you can define that value really well for them, right? So I think that's the two things that I can think of on this question. Thanks for asking this, Pranjit.
Yeah, that's a great question, Pranjit.
If I may add, I would like to add to it. I'm thinking the customers are the SaaS providers or the software companies that Pranjit is mentioning. So with that assumptions, if software companies are moving from subscription to the usage based, or even outcome is the path that people are looking for, right? Although it is way harder than how it seems like to implement. The major challenge that I see is their cost maturity. Your usage based pricing cannot be a reality if you do not have the visibility on how your each cost per tenant or cost per users are. And majority of the customers that I see are struggling because they do not have those muscles wherein they can have the visibility of how each customer costs to them. So that's the difficulty that they are facing that I see. Second difficulty that I see is like, even though like if someone starts offering subscription and usage based pricing, while you're selling to an enterprise customer completely usage based, it is not easier for the procurement to sign the deal, because like if you're say how your customers are going to use, how your employees are going to use the product, that's how I will be charging. And the question becomes, what is the budget? Like, what do I need to sign for? Tell me what is the budget that I can sign for. And for that particular areas, generally people are relying on a subscription plus consumption based pricing, so that there is some flexibility as well as some predictability. And second, the third, that the other methodology that I'm seeing that others are doing, software companies are doing, is credit based. Like they are providing, like earlier on itself, they are providing a certain number of credits, and then they're based on that credits, then as their users or their employees will be using, they will be charged based on that. But it's not easy, because you need to make sure like what's the definition of credit, what happens if the credit is not consumed, how long the credit will remain in effect, expect how that can be, moved to another year or another term. And the another part is obviously the contracting. Like you now need to go through the entire contracting piece, and finally your billing and metering system also needs to be upgraded to support this credit system. At in the business room, Prakash and I can come up with the best fantastic pricing model that we can provide to our customers, and then Bill will come us hunting like what
How
are
do I
you
do this?
thinking? Yeah, when you are developing this, my entitlement doesn't allow it. How about metering? What will happen? What kind of our billing system? It requires at least 6 months for us to implement that.
Yeah.
So overall, like it's just not only like your customers, but then also like the technological limitations are also there that we really need to think about. And although people are revolving, and with AI, we are living in like a really, really quick age. There is I heard a reference that we are living in dog age, which is 7 years is equals to 1 year. Now we are in mouse age, which is 30 years equals to 1 year. But still, these problems I see, like the cost, that then the contracting, that ensuring your procurement understand, then thinking about how billing and metering works together. These are some of the realities that companies are still struggling with.
Makes a lot of sense. And we're down to the last like 5 minutes now. I'm kind of glad. Thank you, Pranjit, for bringing AI into the conversation, because I think talking specifically about like AI, getting into that conversation about tokens and consumption-based pricing and like what that means, because that is exactly the controversy that was long. Like literally changing the value of tokens is enough to make a lot of people angry in terms of their pricing. So thinking deeply about that and understanding where you're going with the AI pricing is a whole new world we're getting into. Let me fire a couple just rapid fire questions here to end us off. We have about 3 minutes left. So, if today I left and went and created my own startup, what would you guys tell me to start off with in terms of thinking about pricing for this new SaaS application? We won't even talk about what it's going to be because it's a secret. It's in stealth mode right now. What would you guys tell me to start off with if I was just starting off on a pricing model for SaaS?
Find that value metric that doesn't change at all. Find that value metric that you want to price on.
Nice. Koyal?
I would say, who are your first 5 customers? Tell me that, and then we will have our discussion.
I have heard, it's interesting that you say that. I feel like within AWS especially, this concept of like, tell me who your top 5 customers are. Let's go talk to them, right? Let's go have that conversation. Oops, sorry about that. And let's have a conversation and figure out where they're going with that. I think that's a really great answer to that. What's one mistake that startup founders make in terms of churn specifically that you would want to talk to them about?
So they don't try and go back to that customer even after they churn, right? A lot of customers are willing to come back quite easily because they've encountered some friction, which is easily surmountable. They don't necessarily go back to every one of those churn customers, or either get them come back or learn from it. They don't do that quite often.
Nice. Koyal?
If I have to answer, my product is so fantastic that there will be no churn. With all seriousness, no, that's not
no churn here.
With all seriousness, it's my product, my Stilt AI. That's what I think about. But with all seriousness, I would say like they don't involve the conversation early on. Like when it comes to renewal, they wait a longer time to get into the conversation of renewal. You should start talking to your customer within first few months of your product. You should know by when your customer would get value from your product and start having the conversation from them. Do not wait until like 2 months before the renewal. That's not good. Like within in my experience, in first 2 months, your customer generally make a decision whether they are going to stick with the product or not. So let's have a conversation early on with your customer.
Nice. I could definitely keep talking here some more, but I think this is a great place to wrap it up. We're right at the top of the hour. Koyal, Prakash, thank you guys for coming. This was a really fun episode for me. Again, this is our 10th episode. Really loved the conversation. Capgemini, thank you guys for coming and working with us such a great AWS partner, Prakash. I've really enjoyed the conversations we've had around pricing with you and Capgemini. Love having you guys in the room with us talking, and I'm glad we could have this conversation with the public as well. So awesome. Coyle, thank you as always. It's been a great week talking with you, and sure you're done. You're happy to have a weekend where you don't have to look at me anymore. But this was really fun. Thank you guys so much, and let's wrap it up there.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much. As
Aparna.
always, all of these are my personal opinions, and you can find Capgemini opinions on their website.
Yes.
Having me today.
Awesome.
Same here. All of these are Coel's opinion, and you can find AWS's opinion on AWS website. But thank you everyone for joining. Specifically, thank you my University of Rochester friends. I see at least 2 of them. So thank you for joining the session.
Awesome. Thanks everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.